Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the sound of metal collapsing into metal, a deep, echoing thunder that rolls across a landscape of forgotten machines. This is not a scrapyard. This is not a junk pile at the edge of a city. This is the gateway to one of the most powerful industrial transformations on the planet, a place where old cars come to die, and where new steel is quietly reborn. Every single day across the United States, Canada, and the UK, thousands of aging vehicles reach the end of their roads. They break down, rust out, or simply become too old to repair. But what most people don't realize is that these abandoned cars don't disappear. They don't rot in fields. They don't sit untouched in junkyards forever. Instead, they enter a sophisticated, carefully engineered system designed to extract every last ounce of value from them. Because every old vehicle, every dented door, every rusted frame, every engine block long past its prime still contains raw materials that the modern world desperately needs. Cars are not waste. Cars are resources. Cars are a man-made mine, richer and more efficient than many natural mines found underground. And this is the heart of today's story: how millions of old cars are recycled into pure new steel through an industrial mega line capable of crushing, shredding, melting, and reforming metal with relentless precision. Stay with me, because later in this documentary, you'll see how something that once carried families, memories, and thousands of miles of history can be reborn as skyscrapers, bridges, refrigerators, rail lines, and even the next generation of automobiles. A life ending, and a new one beginning. The moment an old car arrives at a recycling facility, its second life begins. Teams of technicians approach with scanners, cameras, and tools. The vehicle's VIN is recorded, its age and condition logged, photos captured from every angle. In seconds, it enters a digital tracking system that follows it through every stage of dismantling and transformation. Nothing is left to chance. Every bolt, every wire, every fluid is accounted for. Many people think old cars are worthless, but the global vehicle recycling industry is worth nearly $60 billion a year. The real value is locked inside the metals: steel, aluminum, copper, and precious alloys, all of which can be recovered and reused. Up to 75% of every vehicle can be turned back into something new. And when you recycle steel instead of mining fresh iron ore, you save more than 70% of the energy. That is why recycled steel is one of the most important materials in modern civilization. The first major step is safety. Every battery is removed, from basic lead acid to ultra-high voltage electric vehicle packs. A single battery left in the wrong place can cause fires, chemical leaks, or explosions during crushing. Lead acid batteries are almost entirely recyclable, with more than 98% of their materials reused. Electric vehicle batteries require even more precision. They're detached using insulated tools, placed in protective cases, and sent to specialized recycling centers, where rare metals like lithium, nickel, and cobalt are harvested for future EV production. Next comes fluid extraction. Old cars contain a cocktail of liquids that cannot enter the environment. Using vacuum pumps and sealed hoses, technicians withdraw gasoline, diesel, engine oil, brake fluid, coolant, transmission fluid, even the A or C refrigerant is captured for reuse. The entire system is designed like a closed loop, where nothing touches the soil and nothing evaporates into the air. The surprising part is that many of these fluids are used again inside the plant to power equipment and machinery. Waste turns into fuel. Now, the empty shell of the car faces its first moment of destruction. It is lifted by a hydraulic claw, moved across the yard, and dropped into a compactor, a massive steel chamber lined with crushing plates. With a roar of pressure, the car is squeezed inward from all sides, its frame folding in on itself like paper. Doors crumple, windows shatter, the roof caves in. In less than 30 seconds, what used to be a family vehicle becomes a dense steel block, easier to transport, easier to shred, and easier to melt. But the real transformation begins inside the mega shredder. Imagine a machine the size of a small building, spinning with enough force to tear anything apart. Cars are fed into its jaws, where a spinning rotor lined with hammers hits the metal thousands of times per minute. The sound is deafening. Steel panels peel apart, axles snap, engines explode into fragments. What emerges on the other side is not a car. It's a stream of metal pieces no larger than your hand, falling onto conveyor belts lined with magnets, sensors, and air separators. Magnets pull out steel and iron. Eddy currents separate aluminum. Sensors direct copper and wiring into dedicated channels. Foam, rubber, plastics, all diverted to other recycling processes. Every component has a destination. Every fragment has a purpose. The clean steel fragments are loaded into massive trucks and delivered to steel mills, where the final stage of rebirth begins. Inside the furnace, a chamber hotter than volcano lava, thousands of pounds of shredded car metal melt into a glowing orange liquid. Sparks erupt. Flames dance across the surface. Molten steel flows like a river, its temperature reaching more than 1600 C. From this liquid state, the metal is poured into molds, cast into slabs, and rolled through giant presses that flatten and shape it into new structural forms. These steel slabs will become the skeletons of skyscrapers, the frames of new cars, the beams of bridges, and the invisible foundations of everything from appliances to rail systems. In a matter of hours, the steel from an old car becomes indistinguishable from newly mined steel. The world gets stronger without digging deeper into the earth. Energy is saved, pollution is reduced, and old memories turn into new potential. But perhaps the most remarkable part of the entire process is what it represents. A perfect industrial cycle. A vehicle built a generation ago can re-enter the world as a different form of progress. Again and again. Steel is infinitely recyclable. A car that once drove across the country might, tomorrow, support a skyscraper in New York, a bridge in London, or an electric vehicle in Toronto. The story of every recycled car is a story of transformation, an ending, but a continuation. A reminder that even in an age of rapid consumption, the materials we use still hold life far beyond their first purpose. Millions of cars may reach their last mile, but their steel never stops moving forward. The journey of reborn steel doesn't end at the mill. In fact, the moment molten metal cools into its first solid shape, a new chapter begins, one that stretches across continents, industries, and generations. When the steel slabs are rolled into sheets, beams, or coils, they become part of an international supply chain so vast and interconnected that the atoms from a single recycled car can be scattered across dozens of industries, spreading quietly through the world like invisible fingerprints of a past life. Imagine a thin sheet of steel leaving the rolling mill, still warm to the touch. Within days, it might be on a truck bound for an automaker's stamping plant, where robotic arms cut, bend, and press it into panels for the next generation of vehicles. A portion of that steel could become the hood of a hybrid SUV. Another piece could be pressed into the roof of a compact city car. The cycle completes itself. A car becomes steel. Steel becomes a car again. In some factories, engineers joke that the next vehicle off the assembly line might contain a small, untraceable part of the cars that once drove into the recycling yard. A strange, poetic continuity. Not all recycled steel returns to the automotive world. Massive beams forged from reclaimed metal are shipped to construction sites where skyscrapers rise with astonishing speed. In New York, Chicago, Toronto, London, cities built on ambition, recycled steel silently holds up towers of glass and lead-lit luxury. People walk through revolving doors, sip coffee in sky lounges, and work in corner offices, without ever realizing that the beams above them once belonged to a rusted minivan that broke down somewhere on the interstate. Some of this steel becomes the rigid frame of freight trains that cross vast landscapes, carrying goods from coast to coast. Some flows into the shape of cargo ships that move across the Atlantic. Some becomes the blades of wind turbines standing tall in rural fields. And some becomes the skeleton of bridges that stretch across rivers, connecting cities that would otherwise remain divided. The world stands on steel because steel never dies. it simply changes form. To truly understand the significance of this cycle, you must step back and see the scale. In the United States alone, more than 12 million cars are scrapped every year. When you count Europe, Canada, and parts of Asia, that number nearly doubles. Think for a moment about the chain reaction. 12 million vehicles enter a system. 12 million are crushed, drained, stripped, shredded, melted, and reborn. 12 million machines transformed into the foundation of modern civilization. The recycling industry doesn't just manage waste, it fuels progress. Behind this transformation is an army of workers whose expertise often goes unnoticed. Heavy machinery operators who maneuver 10-ton grapples with the precision of surgeons. Shredder technicians who feel the vibrations of the machine and instantly know when something inside has gone wrong. Furnace operators who control temperatures with such accuracy that a few degrees can determine the quality of the steel. Quality engineers who examine molten samples under microscopes, making adjustments in real time. These people are the heartbeat of the recycling world, standing at the intersection of destruction and creation. Yet the mega processing line is also increasingly shaped by technology. Artificial intelligence tracks the flow of materials through entire facilities. Optical sorters use cameras and sensors to distinguish between plastics, metals, and alloys faster than the human eye. Autonomous cranes stack crushed vehicles with perfect balance. Some facilities are now testing robotic arms that can dismantle cars faster and safer than any human, unscrewing components with mechanical precision, guided by deep learning models that have memorized the structure of thousands of vehicles. But for all the technology, the transformation remains deeply physical. The roar of shredders, the glow of molten steel, the crash of compactors, these sounds and images define the environment. It is industrial theater, dramatic and raw, where energy, motion, heat, and force merge into a single continuous choreography. There is something strangely beautiful about watching an object collapse, then reappear in another form, as if the world itself were rewriting its materials in real time. Environmental impact is at the core of this system. Every ton of recycled steel saves enough energy to power a home for nearly a month. Every crushed car prevents fresh mining. Every drop of reclaimed oil reduces pollution. Recycling isn't just an industry, it's a global strategy. The more we recycle, the less we take from the earth, and the more we preserve for the future. In a world racing toward electrification, renewable energy, and sustainable growth, recycled steel stands as one of the world's most critical building blocks. Think for a moment about the lifespan of a typical car. It is purchased, driven, maintained, repaired, and eventually retired. But the story doesn't end in retirement. A car is one of the few consumer products that can almost completely return to the world as something new. Very few materials on Earth have this kind of circular destiny. Steel is one of them, and as long as steel remains central to global manufacturing, recycling will remain essential to how humanity builds, grows, and evolves. Somewhere in the recycling yard, another old vehicle is being lifted by a claw. Perhaps it carried a family across the country. Perhaps it survived 100 road trips. Perhaps it was passed down through generations. Whatever its history, its story is not over. In a matter of hours, it will join the countless others that have already completed this journey. A journey from the familiar shape of a car to the molten heart of a furnace, and finally, into a new form that will serve a new purpose. In this cycle, nothing is wasted, nothing is lost, everything is transformed. That is the power of the mega processing line. That is the beauty of modern industrial recycling. Millions of old cars may reach their final mile, but their steel will continue traveling farther than any of them ever did. And somewhere, years from now, someone will touch a new car door, walk across a steel bridge, or step into a tall building, never knowing that the material beneath their hand once lived a completely different life.